Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, Luke Cage and the Harlem Renaissance. Netflix recently released 13 episodes of their newest Marvel Comics live-action television series called Luke Cage. You don't have to be a comic book fan to enjoy Luke Cage or even this Human Meme podcast, because we're moving beyond the comic book lore and into the sense of the story of Luke Cage, and we are diving deeper into what the idea of Luke Cage means in America, and to the more necessary ideal of a Harlem that is always in Renaissance. Luke Cage is a black superhero who has skin so strong he cannot be harmed by ordinary bullets from a gun. He is also powerful with his fists, but because of that fact, he vows never to kill anyone. Luke Cage is trying to set right the moral power of Harlem against an army of police and politicians and black obstructionists and absolutists who care more about money and influence than they do for the citizens of Harlem. The Harlem of Luke Cage is filled with guns and bullets and betrayals and dying, and you cannot get enough of it, because there is an authenticity of being there, right there in the middle of all the murder and the mayhem, and you're there from the safety of your television set. There aren't any angels or archangels in Luke Cage. Even Luke himself is a flawed liar hiding from a past that includes escaping from prison, and yet you love and respect most of the characters in Luke Cage because they're all trying to do the right thing, all based on their worldview, and also in which pocket they find themselves hiding. Here are some of the pieces that make up the Luke Cage matrix. The police. The police are always looking for Luke Cage because he's a menace to their power, and he's a fugitive at large. As a vigilante looking to clean up the streets all by himself, the police know their authority is in ruins in their need to control the people. It's hard to walk the streets to round up the bad guys as a patrol community when one guy, Luke Cage, always wearing a Carhartt hoodie, is already there cleaning up your messes. Of course, some of the police are corrupt. They're owned by the bad guys. Because anyone can be bought off in that world for the right price, and while the price is high monetarily, it is a moral price that we know must never be paid, but is always plied. To have the cover of the police in which to do your dirty dealing is a gift that only the blessed and the corrupt can exploit, and money talks louder on the street than the word of God. The community. The people of Harlem are just looking to get into the next day. They know they're doomed, caught between a zealous police department and unsafe streets where guns are the negotiating bullets for community service. If you don't play along to get along, then you're going to end up, toes up, in the coroner's office. Anarchy is the effective political poison of the day. Nothing is right or predictable. so you just jump into the hellfire and hope you can claw your way out into the next. There is no justice in Luke Cage's Harlem, not even street justice, because every outcome is already prepaid, and the only thing that matters is who you owe and how much, and where you're going to pay up on your debt with your life. And yes, it's all a miserable way of life, living in the middle, caught between two unwinnable extremes, and getting stuck in the crossfire is always the eventual end of everyone, because that's what happens when you live in an urban war zone. Religion. There are false idols and imitation prophets all over Luke Cage, and they all quote the Bible, and they all excuse their murdering and hateful behavior as being divine and instructive, while the Spirit of Christ is in none of them, not even Luke Cage. His father was a preacher man, and Luke knows the decaying power of religion when used against the inevitable and the innocent. The music. The songs in Luke Cage are historic, holistic, and unique. Yes, there's a lot of rap and some soul and lots of blues and a jigger of jazz. And the soundtrack of Luke Cage is the cultural black rock of music from the last 100 years. In underlying gospel tones, the music of Luke Cage is longing and anger and resignation. When something bad is about to happen in Luke Cage, the show, you know it because of that glorious music playing on the soundtrack. The enemies. All superheroes need a similarly strong evil counterpart, and the TV series has them by the fistful. And while the Luke Cage bad guys are not powered people like Luke, the evildoers do have a lot of strength and a deconstructive power. And the bad people survive mainly because Luke will not kill them. Luke only fights them and their henchmen, and that in many ways allows the evil to perpetuate. So we learn it takes more than a superhero to fight the bad guys. The community has to join you in the hope for a better, safer life, and, like it or not, and believe it or not, the police need to help you keep order. That is the job they are paid to do, and it is their sworn duty. The police are paid to patrol and to make the neighborhood safer from those who prefer corruption and chaos in the streets. They want that to rule the game. Policing in black communities is vital and important, and Luke Cage makes that supremely clear, even though he's on the run. Here's a quick soundbite from Luke Cage, the TV show. It's Cottonmouth, the #1 bad guy, talking about being the king of Harlem.
You like my Biggie photo? Me too. You know what draws your eye when you look at that? The crown. Want to know why? Because everybody wants to be the king.
And that scary scene is just what seethes inside and outside of all of Luke Cage. And we, as the watchers, feel that need for justice and right-doing, both on screen and in the real streets of Harlem. The hero. Luke Cage is the hero's anti-hero. He can give and take a beatdown. And while the fact remains that he will not kill anyone with his super strength, we also wonder who, if not for Cottonmouth and his ilk, who kill and maim and wound at will, deserves a death. How many people do you have to kill before you get your righteous end in a hail of bullets or in a deadly beatdown from your cousin's sister mother? Luke Cage himself may be the street enforcer, but he isn't justice. It isn't Luke Cage's job to decide who lives and who dies. He leaves that determination open to the system and the streets. But it is Luke Cage's job, he believes, to separate and identify right from wrong, and for all of us to know the differences between the two. And he wants to take drugs and drug money off the streets where that influence peddling does no good and only procreates harm. Harlem is and always has been the jewel of New York City. For everyone, the intelligence and talent and mood of urban systems is undeniable there. To understand why New York City is the center of the world, you must first understand why Harlem is the heartbeat of the city. Luke Cage helps you get there, to that understanding. Should Harlem always remain black and free? How much of a neighborhood's identity is color-related, race-related, and how much of it is just people-related? Columbia University in the city of New York is pressing hard to expand into Harlem. Neglected, beautiful Harlem brownstones are being bought up by white folk looking for a cheap place in New York City to live and buy a mansion. White flight into Harlem is a community concern. Majority ubiquity isn't always good for the proper forward propagation of a niche culture and human values. Every mixing makes everything else just a little less vital and spicy and dangerous. Perhaps the infusion of new blood and new thoughts into Harlem is a good thing. But there's also a fine balance between invasion and preservation of a community and its people that must not totter into teetering. And when money and fear and drugs and guns rule the streets, nobody wins, nobody advances. We all fall down. And so it is left up to the little bit of Luke Cage in the rest of us, who have to step forward and say, I'm here. I want to help, and I want to fit in. And I respect what was here before me. And I'll do things the right way. And in that acquiescence of personal panoply, the Harlem Renaissance may begin again. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.